Wanted to do a quick update on these battery packs that I've been messing with. The first one I spent a lot of time fooling around with. I really thought I'd be able to talk to these on the I2C bus with just a Raspberry Pi or something. It turns out I can. It's just that first board was pretty much unresponsive, so I haven't done any more troubleshooting with that, but I did hook right up to this one, and it's been communicating. However, now my camera is giving me trouble. Basically, what I learned is on top of I2C is an smbus protocol, which actually, as it turns out, on the Raspberry Pi, it has a few limitations. There isn't full support for some of the communications, in particular, doing block reads, I think is what it is. So real quickly, see if I can find my command history here. Oh, damn it. Let's see, I do this. It's like my third take. I don't want to waste a bunch of time. There we go. So this actually is displaying what is supported on this chipset, which I think is like a 2708 chipset. And block reads aren't really supported, and I guess the details are in the way that smbus lies on top of I2C, and the way that basically that interaction, sending a stop bit or something instead of a read, some kind of protocol-y thing. Despite that, what I found, I guess, one of the other things, which I guess is worth mentioning, is while you're loading the modules, you can actually specify baud rate. Right now it says 0. I actually just had a power outage. I believe this gets defaulted to 100K, so I'm actually kind of surprised that the baud rate isn't reporting 100K. But I know that you can specify it at module load time just by adding this additional flag. So and the reason I was doing this is because this device, for the most part, was returning a lot of FFs, basically two bytes, all full for the most part, most of the time. But it's like I started off just querying the commands, and even though the device was there and I was getting back a response, the response was almost always FF. So at first I just thought I was doing something wrong, or I didn't understand something about the higher level protocol. But I kind of just think this thing is not happy right now. And here's a few reasons why. Why I think that. I don't actually know. I don't know what's going on really, but I tried to pull out some of the manufacturing strings. It looks like all this is defaulted. This isn't the default, so some of the stuff was set, but there's some strange anomalies. So over here we've got the actual commands, and these are the responses to the different commands. And one of the ones of note is So like here we've got, I believe this is the current and the voltage. This is yeah, the pack voltage. Oh, and then temperature, which this is in Kelvin. So I think that's 297 Kelvin. At first I was worried that my temperature sensors were damaged from pulling off this thing, but we are getting some accurate temperatures, and there might even be temperatures on the board. And then, oh, yeah, remaining pack capacity, state of charge. I'll just leave this up so y'all can, the one person that watches this can actually see these numbers. But there was one that really bugged me. I think it was this dude. Yeah, so the charging voltage. So there's a little bit of weirdness because this device, you know, it can turn on and off the charging FETs and the discharging FETs, and in a way it essentially acts like a battery charger, right? So it's also smart, right? So it, when programmed correctly, knows what charge voltage it wants, but I believe it also might be able to manage that charge voltage itself. It could certainly cut off, you know, a charge on its own, and that's often how these functions. But you can also control that externally. The data pins actually map back to these two N pins, and then over here we've got 3 parallel grounds and 3 parallel pack voltage pins. So these just carry all the amps. This actually has a 200 ohm resistance into these pins, which I've tapped into. This is essentially the smbus. So I guess where I'm getting hung up in the details is that some of these things definitely look like default values, but a charge voltage of 12.6 isn't appropriate for this pack because it's a 4-cell in series pack at 3.65 volts per cell. That should be much higher. This actually comes straight out of the manual as the default 3-cell lithium ion setup, and then this the corresponding amps that it wants to charge at. So kind of what's unclear to me, and some of the crap that I've been trying to figure out to get some life out of this thing is, you know, is it in error, and why are some of these wrong? Because it just looks wrong to me. I feel this should be, you know, what would it be, 14 point something, whatever 3.65 times 4 is. That feels wrong. These never change. And then there was in error, these should be set to 0. So in other words, if the pack is in error, these should be set to 0. This is the battery status word, and these two significant bits being set when I last went and decoded them, and I had some of this crap up here. Here's the sbdata 1.1 spec, which I think is what this thing follows. And bear with me here. Oh, I thought they actually had it in the, yeah. So on page 28, they actually describe the bits for that. And believe me, like the information, I don't like the way the information flows throughout all these disparate pieces of documentation. And there's extended documentation that TI has, and they use different words for things, and it's actually really annoying. I would yell and scream if I were in charge. Yeah, so we're not even getting back a full word here. We're just getting back one byte, right? And in this case, wait, let me get my facts straight. No, we're getting back FF. That's it's making me feel stupid. Yeah, so here, so this is going to be 1 byte of data. So we're basically down into these status bits. So the most significant bit is initialized. The next significant bit is discharging. That correlates to this status right here. When when I kind of forcibly charge, if I add enough voltage here, the system will charge, but it doesn't seem happy about it, and this FET gets kind of hot. And I've been unclear, like I cannot get discharge out of this. Like, this thing is never, I can never see signaling opening any of these FETs or closing any of these FETs. So it's like the shit really isn't working, but I can add enough voltage here where it will just start to charge the pack, and it seems to do it through this one FET. So I don't know if that's part of the sensing that happens, or I don't really know if I don't really know what demons are happening here. But since the whole thing is kind of freaky anyway, like, it really, most of the time, in fact, you can see it on my scope here. This is going to be really out of focus, but most of the time it's just returning FFs. And like I said, I thought I was doing something wrong. But I don't think I am. And then actually I also found some example. And believe it or not, I found some C code. No, let's leave that one. I found some C code. Yeah, so check it out. So I actually found a project, COMAN, which in there they had a utility that is actually talking to this device. So I really didn't have to do much. It felt like cheating, but I was certainly happy to. Come on. I was certainly happy to have found this. I basically just went and defined the correct adapter, which on the Raspberry Pi is going to be 1. And even the device here was already correct, which is good. It means maybe other things haven't strayed too far from their defaults on the actual setup of this thing. And at any rate, what I ended up doing was this was going, and every second getting a bunch of stuff. It was also getting some extended cells that I'm not going to have. And I basically just rewrote this because I was receiving the FFs. I just rewrote this to accumulate the values, because I was convinced that the values I was getting on very rare occasion were actually real, right? So I rejected anything that was a full word of full bits, and then eventually just accumulated data. So So that's what we're seeing here is the output of this program. And in fact, if I just kill it, it's pretty cool. He wrote like a little daemon and everything. So we fire up the daemon. Yeah, and you can see now that basically everything is 0, right? But as the values fill in, they sure as heck look correct. And they are. So I spent quite a bit looking at this battery status. I kind of failed at writing a program that correctly did bitwise operations. So I'm an idiot. This battery mode thing threw me for a while. But at the end of the day, I see things such as the charging voltage and the charging current, which look wrong to me. So I either suspect corruption, and like if I had the tools from TI as well as their dongle, I actually found the software I need, but the dongle's like $75, and I've heard through grumblings that it quit working in Windows 7. And I'm not really a Windows dude anyway, but I've got Windows 10. But I don't really know. Like, it sure would be nice if you could just use a dongle. Like, I assume the thing communicates over I2C. And I don't know why that's so special. But I'm not really willing to throw $75 at it. Like, it would kind of be cool to reprogram this thing, but holy moly, it's been enough damn rabbit holing anyway, and it doesn't appear to be functioning, and I haven't found the right bit to actually turn it on and make it discharge, and that's really irritating. Some of the stuff that's still throwing me a little bit is there's some of this extended device status stuff, and this may or may not have anything enabled, but at the end of the day, like some of the stuff you can do here might be like managing the actual charging system that the battery offers, because the battery pretty much is a charging system, right? It's pretty smart. And you could let it manage the charge, or you can let it request what voltage it wants, and or you can turn these off and on externally, and I believe all that is using this extended command set. I haven't attempted to write anything here, and I don't really get how that's supposed to work. I've read some of the extended docs, but it's just, this kind of shit irritates me. And at the end of the day, tons of this stuff is read only. The only read write stuff you've got here, perhaps battery mode, but I think battery mode only let you toggle the only bit that was writable within battery mode was basically a bit that determined what your milliamp hour versus volt amps reporting is, or some shit like that. It was like, you can get milliamp hour, or you can get, I don't know what. Basically, it wasn't interesting. It didn't look like, there was, I didn't see any evidence of something I could write to turn off and on these dudes. And I also couldn't find anything really wrong with this pack. And in fact, I did, like, if I begin charging it, I was getting some changes in the battery status, but it was just taking away that number 6, it was taking away this. So discharging went away and charging showed up. I never got a fully charged bit get set. And these two cells actually started going too high. So I don't think any of the charge pump circuitry was working properly. And yeah, like I'm not sure exactly how to troubleshoot that at this point, because every value that I took that went around this chip seemed like it was correct. And I'm left with the only anomalies that I have is that the thing doesn't seem like it's giving me it's not reliably talking whenever you query it. It's doing it when it feels like it. so I don't fucking know. These are still good cells. I'm gonna use them for something, but I'm probably not gonna use this battery management system. I think it's a good system, but I'm not real fond of Texas Instruments tooling around it. And though they have some support forums and stuff like that, I didn't see a lot of resolution for a lot of the problems people were having. And I saw lots and lots of troubles that didn't seem dead on with what I'm having, but weird stuff. But now that I've learned a little bit about smbus and I2C and sbdata, and the Python libraries are there, and there's there's plenty of examples. And then of course this is probably the worst thing to do any debugging with, I'm guessing, given that the 2708 doesn't have the best implementation of like smbus. I briefly thought about firing up an Arduino and whatever, but I just think that at this point, like, I spent like a good night messing with this thing, and I don't have a belief that it's gonna get better. And I certainly don't want to buy into the tool chain that barely seems to have any support, and of course now is just antiquated. So I'm gonna pull the other board on the other pack that really isn't alive, and I'm gonna take a look at the bottom. Maybe there's a sense resistor or something, but I haven't really looked at the bottom of this whole thing. And I may swap out this FET, but I kind of expected to see some error conditions, and I don't really see them. I just see strange behavior and some values that I just think look wrong. But then I see some values that lead me to believe this thing actually was programmed correctly, because this is a 2,000 or 20,000 milliamp hour pack. But yeah, I mean, look, we're still filling in stuff here, and it drove me crazy thinking that I was doing something wrong, when really the chip the whole time was just giving me bunk values. So there's the scope again, and I've got getting stuff decoding there was actually a giant pain in the ass too. But you can see the FF value, or the FF values mostly happening, and then very, very rarely you'll just get a value that's good. And in the case of that daemon, it's reading every single value every time, right? So like I basically finally got sick of that, and even though I was very thankful to have a second opinion on the whole mess, but doing just writing this little thing that just would hammer on one value until it got it. It's just sitting there hammering on it, and then it gets it, and then it moves on to the next one. Like, you know, like one system can run in the background, and yeah, it's probably up to date, but this could be a minute behind, or this could be a minute behind, or like here we've been running the daemon for 10 minutes probably, and still no value there, right? So this at least just hammers through everything. Even so, there were multiple values that I never ever got. Um, so whatever, man. There's a lot of rabbit holing with this stuff. I I am curious now about other implementations, and of course, you could probably hack on laptops, laptop batteries, and do the exact same thing. In the case of a laptop battery, you're probably going to get more reliable information since so many of them were made. Um, Certainly, you get, serial numbers and things like that, but um, the battery mode and some of the error stuff, like the battery status, some of this can give you info or insight before you even tear down the pack. As to what the state of the system is. And then the mode stuff actually can tell you what mechanism of control you potentially have, like i.e. Either some of the extended data that may be available, but or things like controlling the MOSFETs externally, or there may be some cool stuff you could do with a battery. So that does interest me. But I have a feeling I'm just gonna end up maybe slapping on a less error prone system, even though I was excited. But whatever. The juice ain't worth the squeeze. So um, I can build a little shitty board that will just do the same job and not have all this complexity, I guess. But I am a little bummed. So anyway, if pulling apart the other pack reveals anything, I'll certainly do a follow-up. This is my first foray into this type of thing. I really haven't spent a lot of time doing any kind of reverse engineering on stuff like this. I was able to look at this and sort of go, oh, this is cool. Like, I know why it's cool, but once it gets into like the gory freaking details, and once I start seeing complaints from people that are using the chips, or I have to like go to some weird tool set that everybody complains doesn't work since Windows 7, like, man, that's just not my world that I can deal with. But yeah, so if something comes up on the other pack, or if swapping out this one, if this dude's problematic, which I don't think it is, since all the errors I've seen don't look like errors to me. I'm kind of stumped. And I think I would start from ground zero if I had the tool set to do it. But bah, what a waste! What a fucking waste of time. So with that, now I do have one other thing, which is I'll have to make some room here. So then yesterday this fell into my lap, and holy shit, I mean, this is another 64 cells. I'm guessing I haven't even looked at this thing. It was at 30 I think it was like at 32 volts or something. So I'm guessing this is an 8S 8P battery pack. And look at the goo. Like they literally just set this giant hunk in there, and then they fucking poured the ooze in there. So I mean, even if some of these cells are good, like these are decent. I think they're Panasonic cells. I think they're 2000 milliamp hour. I've got a data sheet here somewhere on them. Anyway, this thing isn't bad, but I don't know if I'm gonna be able to do anything with these. However, it did come with another BMS, and I don't think I'll be able to help but to look at this BMS as well. And I think in this case, at least I have a little bit of info. This is a Torquedo. It's German. And this is super beefy. This is nice, good shit. There's a nice gasket right here. The whole thing bolts together. I'm not sure about the construction of this thing, but it's certainly nicely built. So we'll see what the Germans choose, and maybe I'll see a better implementation of a different kind of management system. Most stuff I've seen just has resistors on it. Just bleeder resistors. So anyway, if anything's interesting with this thing, or if I decide that it is in good shape, like I mean the pack is got voltage, so I don't know, may I'll pull errors out of this thing, and I don't know. But right now, like electronics are a pain. I don't do this stuff enough to be proficient at it. So it takes some work, and I am not happy with the way these various docs read. I'd fire me some doc people. But anyway, that's my little update in case anybody was interested in those batteries. I tried, and certainly they'll get used for something. I just maybe not with the pieces they have on them now.